what I want you to take away from this podcast is that resistance tells you you're on the right track. And sitting through it, getting past it, that is where change happens. Welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, the podcast where we debunk the eat less, move more, shrink more mentality and focus on what really matters, which includes your relationship with your body, food, self-worth, and the behaviors that align with all of those. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, licensed therapist with specialized training in food and body obsession, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach. At the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, we believe what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. So let's have a conversation about that. Before we get into today's episode, I want to make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, if you don't want to miss any content that's being dropped, make sure you hit that notification bell as well. I also want to know who are the people you want to hear from on this show and what topics would you like me to continue to cover. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. I'm so excited that you took this time out for yourself to learn something about your physical and mental health. We're in the second part of our Back to the Basics series. Now, I wanted to say something about this series because for people who are new to this podcast, welcome. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that follow and subscribe button. But you're probably here to learn the basics of health and wellness. And I'm telling you, that's actually not what this series is about. Because being a licensed therapist with specialized training in why we have obsessions with our bodies, why we are fixated on food, I understand that behaviors like teaching you how to eat, how to be in a calorie deficit, how to work out, that's something that's great. You should know that. And there's probably thousands of podcasts out there that are going to teach you that. However, as someone who's worked with thousands of women all over the world who've tried that multiple times and feel as if they've failed, this series is about what's on the deeper level. Now, yes, I am going to talk in our nutrition segment about your relationship with food, and in that give you some tips on the best foundations to create around your nutrition to help support a better relationship with food. However, this is going to take you on a deeper level, and I guarantee if you can put these basics into practice, that other stuff will be so easy to execute. So I just wanted to say that. So today we're talking about why it feels so hard to create change. Hear me out. It's the new year, of course, and you are ready to work out, right? You're ready to eat better. And say for you, you're someone who really struggles with snacking at the end of the day, okay? You're going to, you've probably tried to drink water, or you've tried to, walk away, put a timer on and not snack, right? But after a couple of days, maybe weeks, maybe months of that working, you're slowly pulled back to having that. And I'm not saying afternoon snack. I have an afternoon snack every day, but you know what I'm talking about. Ending up in the pantry, mindlessly snacking or taking little bites while you're cooking dinner, then eating something after dinner. Just kind of that like mindless, unchained snacking, if you will. Why? Why do I do it, but then I'm pulled back to what I used to do? That is what we're going to talk about today. And I do want to say, as my desk is I must have kicked my desk, so it's super crooked. I do want to say that I also wanted to talk about this today because in our resolutions and then also the goals and systems conversation, I said these 4 things. I said, your brain wants you to come back to what's predictable, comfortable, coping, and safe. And I said that to you a couple times. And thank God for me, you guys just believe me. But today I'm like, well, let's explain what that is. Why don't we take it a step deeper? Because the more you know, ding, 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 the better, right? So we're talking about your subconscious mind. And I'm so excited to talk about this. This is the root. And when I say what you say in your mind, I'm not talking about conscious thought. I'm talking about subconscious thought. What you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. You want to believe that you have a healthy relationship with your body. Like you want to see it as positive and respect it and do all those things, but that subconscious is rolling the tape. So let me get into it. So our subconscious mind does exactly what I just said. It operates in the background, right? It's running in the background like a tape that plays. And our subconscious mind is built on everything that we've experienced, but specifically around our experiences with human needs and connection. And I'm going to talk a lot about these human needs over the course of this Back to the Basics series. Human needs. So obviously we have our physical needs. We need, we'll pretend like those are taken care of. But we also have emotional needs. We have a need to be loved and feel connected. We have a need for safety. We have a need for identity or autonomy, like a need to be understand ourselves and trust ourselves. We have a need to grow and change. We have a need for variety. And these needs obviously have helped us survive as a species. We obviously have our physical needs, but we can look back at studies on orphans. I believe it was in Russia. And these poor little baby angels were not touched. They weren't held. And they would rock and they would try to stimulate some sort of sense of relief. Some of them died, right? So these emotional needs or spiritual needs even are there to help us survive. Okay. So when we're talking about your subconscious, it is everything that we've experienced, but specifically making sure that we survive. And it's going to, it encapsulates as well our habits, our fears, our patterns in an effort to survive, right? And the problem with your subconscious is it doesn't care if those habits, patterns, coping skills are good for us. It just cares if they're familiar and predictable. Because your subconscious likes experience. It likes to say, well, I know when I do this, this happens. And I know the outcome of that. I've survived that. So we're going to continue with that, right? And the problem with it is it's not just this place where you're storing memory. It's incredibly emotional. It's incredibly irritable, reactive. And I want you to think of it as like your hyper vigilant, watch party. It's a search party. It's just always scanning. And what is it scanning for? It's scanning for anything that looks like, sounds like, smells like, feels like the thing that wasn't safe, right? So it's always scanning and it's looking for ways to then keep you safe. And this is why when we start to try to do something that's outside of the tapes that our subconscious plays, that we find resistance, we find friction. So anytime you start to eat better, maybe you're starting to meditate and calm your mind, maybe you're going to set boundaries with other people, your brain might scream like, what the fuck? This is not cool. This is a threat. Go back to what I know. So like we were talking about with snacking, which I'll elaborate on. The discomfort that you feel when we're trying to make change, this is your mind protecting your comfort zone. And like I've told you guys many, many times, like we cannot grow or change unless we get uncomfortable. And that process in your mind of, yeah, well, we could work out later, or I've already done 2 workouts this week, maybe 2's enough, or maybe I don't have to do this at all. That thinking, that kind of dread feeling, it's what we call mental resistance. And your subconscious mind creates mental resistance when we're trying to initiate change. It says, no, this is way too much. This is not familiar. I do not like this. One thing I want to say about that is it takes less energy for you to work from a subconscious place. So if you're exhausted, if you've had a long day, if you're overwhelmed, your brain, it feels even more overwhelmed to try to make the change because it requires more energy to make that change. It requires less energy to just be on autopilot. Just like think of your car on cruise control. It requires less energy from you, right? So I want you to keep that in mind as well, because that your physical self, the exhaustion, the tiredness, the fatigue, the emotional overwhelm, all of those things contribute to what we're talking about today. But coming back to the mental resistance, right? Mental resistance doesn't have to be loud. It can be very, very sneaky. Sudden tiredness when it's time to do the new thing. Most of you are like, oh, yeah, know that. Excuses flooding your mind, right? Overthinking or second guessing. So you're kind of in this analysis paralysis, or a subtle pull, but a strong pull to just do what you normally do. And I spoke about this with my group coaching program, which I love. I love to talk to them first about a concept and then introduce it here, because they also gave me some sneaky ways that mental resistance happens. And it's what I talked about. So that idea of like, I'm supposed to do 4 workouts, but 3 is more than 2. And normally I would do 2. So I'm just going to do 3. Now, for some people, that is a win. Normally I do 2. I'm making myself uncomfortable to do 3. However, what this particular client was talking about was, but then I just get stuck in that, doing the minimum. And I told her, I said, I get what you're saying. Like, I rebel, or I'm sorry, she said, I hijack, or I hack the system, because I say, well, normally I would do 2 and I've done 3. So that's enough, even though my goal is maybe 4. And I told her it's that kind of manipulation of the system that keeps you stuck from getting to where you want to be. So that's a little bit more complex, but for a lot of people, they do that. They're like, I just do the minimums, and I talk myself into believing that those minimums are wins when initially they are wins. However, when they keep us staying the same and they become our default, and that is not authentically who we want to be, that is where it's a problem. So you may not even realize that this is happening, and the whole point of this conversation is to bring what is a subconscious conscious, because that's the only way we can create change. So I want to come back to our snacking, right? So you're trying to stop late night snacking. You have made good choices all day long. You had your salad, maybe even just had balanced meals, right? You drink your water. You're feeling really good. You're feeling really, really accomplished. But then 9 p.m. comes along. You're tired. You're kind of like sinking in the couch. I have my big couch here, right? You might be watching Below Deck or scrolling on TikTok on your phone. And out of nowhere, your brain says, hey, you've earned a little treat, don't you think, right? You're not even like that bad. Like, you're not even that fat. Like, you should go have it. Like, one snack won't hurt you, right? And the next thing that you know, while your goal is to stop snacking, you're standing in front of the fridge. You're not even freaking hungry. And you're just looking to settle that discomfort. What was the discomfort? It was that little voice saying, hey, it's uncomfortable right now, right? Because it's not about the food. It's about the subconscious pulling you back to the familiar. Your brain has tied the end of the day with you having comfort from food, right? A comforting snack, right? It's become emotionally safe for you to have that food. It's a ritual that you've created. Now, when you try to stop it, right, you're removing a piece of your safety, especially if you don't have something else in place of food to create that sense of comfort or relief. So your brain is like, why would I remove the only thing that you have that creates a sense of comfort or relief? Why would I remove that? That's a very unpredictable territory. That is too overwhelming. It is way too uncomfortable. So I'm going to pull you back to the snacking. Your mind completely resists. So here's the key. So many women see that as failure when it is by design. And I want to say something about that example. Again, I'm going to go a level deeper. This pattern, and you're going to learn more about this in this Back to Basics, is most likely a byproduct of you having, say, a parent who did not know how to emotionally regulate. Therefore, you never learned the coping skills to emotionally regulate. And probably very early on, food was that thing for you. So it's not even about the food. It's about the fact that I can't handle my own emotions and I need to avoid them. I need to numb them. And this is the only way I know how to do that. Because if I feel them, because I don't have experience of feeling them, because again, maybe certain emotions in your family were acceptable. My client told me today, her dad will say, you hurt by one emotion, which is anger. He thinks he has one emotion. And so you don't know how to experience yourself. So the brain says, I'm not going to let you experience yourself. You don't have anything else that we can use to handle these emotions. So no, we're not taking away the food, the snacking. What I want you to take away from this podcast is that resistance tells you you're on the right track. And sitting through it, getting past it, that is where change happens. So let's talk about that more. So recognizing your subconscious patterns is the first key to making change. We have to make the subconscious conscious or the unconscious conscious before we can change anything. Because as I've talked about in the past, that unconscious incompetence means that I'm just walking around with problems that I don't know I have. It's not until we become aware, conscious, that it is a problem that we can begin to change it. But even then, we need to learn the pattern of it. A subconscious pattern is any behavior, thought loop, emotional reaction that plays out automatically. It happens without thought. You just get there. It's like I've used this example in the past for other ideas of, you drive home and you just get home and you're kind of on autopilot because you've done it so many times. It's predictable. It's familiar, right? And it's the thing you keep doing even though you said that you wouldn't. So for me, one of my patterns, not behaviors, right, that I tend to get stuck in is I really struggle with asking for help. This is still something I struggle with today. And why? Because in my life, to keep myself safe, I had to do things myself, right? Or I learned how to cope on my own. I've learned that being on my own is better than being around other people, because if I'm around other people, my needs won't be met. I need to meet their needs. Okay. So now in my life, when I want to ask for help, I want to text a friend, I want to call somebody, that mental resistance that kicks in says, that person's busy right now. Like, they don't want to hear this from you. Like, they've got so much going on. Like, they don't care. They don't care. And so I don't do it. And then I feel alone. I feel maybe helpless, like no one can help me. And that is a pattern that I am now aware of and have worked. My next step is like working through that resistance. And like what I'll talk to you guys about and what we're going to do it from, like, I want to coach you through this. So pull out your paper if you need it. I want you to learn to sit through that resistance. However, before we do that, I want you to, like I said, grab a piece of paper if you haven't already. I want you to start thinking about, from a surface level, the thing that you're stuck in the most. And I want you to just write down kind of what happens. So like my example, I want help, right? Or I want to talk to someone. I want to reach out to someone. And then I talk myself out of it. I keep myself alone. And I'm not getting anywhere closer to like asking for help, right? That's my pattern. What is your pattern? Ask yourself, what situations trigger me the most? So for me, I don't actually know. I think it's obviously when I'm like highly emotional, having an emotion to the point where my resources that I have feel like they're not working. Like that's when I'm going to ask for help. Like, okay, I've used all my resources and I still need someone, right? Which is a point that a normal person, not that I'm abnormal, but you know what I'm saying, a non-traumatized person would just call somebody, right? But for me, it's like, nope. So the first question I want you guys to ask yourself, like, what situations trigger me not doing that thing, right? So maybe that's an easier way to ask. So not just what situations trigger me the most, but like the question was, what is the thing that you're trying to change that you're stuck in? And what situations trigger you to move away from that thing? Okay? It's an easier way of asking it. Next, when do you feel out of control or on autopilot? So in this sense, out of control means that I am not able to execute the change that I want, or I'm just so aloof, I find myself doing the thing that I don't want to do. Okay. Where do you feel, or when do you feel out of control or on autopilot? What habits or reactions feel normal to you that do not serve you? Again, like I said, abnormal me is like, yeah, no, they don't want to talk to me. And you guys, I know you've heard this a lot from me, but it's just hilarious because like my job is to like listen to people and help them, which makes a lot of sense because that's how I was conditioned. So I get it. Do as I say, not as I do, right? So, all right. So we've talked about what is the thing I'm trying to change that I'm stuck in, what situations trigger me back or trigger me away from the thing I'm trying to change. When do I feel out of control or on autopilot? And what habits or reactions feel normal but don't serve me? Next, when I stop the habit or task I'm trying to change, what is happening in my thoughts prior? Then what happens when I act on my thoughts? Okay? So I played this out for you. I say to myself, no, they don't want to hear it. Like, they have so much going on in their life. Like, no one wants to hear your bullshit. Like, shouldn't you be over it by now? Blah, 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 blah. When I talk about it, it actually gives me a little bit like of a icky feeling that is most likely that same feeling I feel in that moment. This is coaching. I'm coaching you the same way I would coach a client. And this, what I just taught you is huge in regards to progressing forward or creating change. Because what did I say? We cannot change what we don't know. We cannot change what is on autopilot. We have to bring it to the front. I want you to take your index finger and touch your forehead. Behind your skull there is your prefrontal cortex, which is involved in all your executive thinking, your rationalization, all of that. The goal of this is to move. Now take your finger and go to the back of your skull, right? By like where, like the nape of your neck. We want to move from that part of your brain, which is your monkey mind, the limbic system, the kind of like fight or flight. And we want to come to the front. And what we're doing in this activity is basically taking from the back and putting it to the front, right? So keep this in your journal, keep it on your phone. And I want you to track this as you go. So again, it could be reaching for food when we're not hungry, snapping at people when we feel overwhelmed. I had an example of that. It was actually a client processing an experience with a caretaker where the caretaker will be passive aggressive. And if somebody acknowledges that she is acting or I won't say acting negatively, but the experience of the other person is uncomfortable with the way that she's acting because she's being passive aggressive, huffing and puffing. The person brings it to her attention. And then the response is, but you're doing this to me. This is your fault. If you weren't, okay, that's a pattern. That's a default. Projection. Okay. If you're zoning out for hours on your phone, I talked about this back a few months ago. Big part of the grieving process is disconnecting. And I would just zone out on TikTok. I'm so thankful that now I'm starting to read again. And that to me is a bit of zoning out, but like I have a process to it that brings me back to reality. I love that. Another pattern is just putting off tasks when you know they'll help you. I hear this all the time. Like, I know if I work out, it's going to make me feel better. I know that if I eat some protein in the morning, I feel better. But you're putting off those tasks, even though you know they'll help you. And of course, when we're doing this, when we're keeping track of not only the pattern recognition, which is those first set of questions, but also, when it's happening in the moment, how it's happening, I want you to stay curious and try to get out of critical. Critical could be your autopilot. So being curious about it too might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but we want to just notice it, because judging it's not going to help anything. Your goal is to build awareness around it, not shame. If we judge it, we build shame. If we watch it, observe it, be curious with it, we build awareness around it. So keep that in mind. Once you start to see the pattern, you'll gain the ability to respond instead of react. And one of the easiest ways to do this is pause. Because remember, our subconscious mind is very reactive and impulsive. Once we can pause, we create a moment or a window of change where the choice is ours. And when we can understand and recognize those patterns happening, what are we doing? We're coming to the current moment. We are in our conscious mind. We're bringing it back to now. We're recognizing what's happening in us now. We're pausing, and then we're choosing to redirect that habit toward something else, right? This acknowledgement is huge. And I will say, just because you do it once doesn't mean it's going to change forever. You're going to do it, and it's not going to feel like it works for you. You're going to do it, and sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. You're going to do it and sit through the resistance and make it through. You're going to do it, sit in the resistance, and the resistance is going to feel too much for you, and you're going to stop. Any of those outcomes, I should say, those are wins. They are steps in the right direction, even if you choose that, this is too overwhelming. You've intentionally made the choice that it's too overwhelming. Now, again, if that becomes your norm, that's creating a new subconscious pattern. We don't want that. Okay. So before we talk about the techniques, again, the first one is the awareness. First one is the awareness, becoming the observer of your own life. And from there, real transformation can be possible. I added this into my notes because when I'm writing the Back to the Basics notes, because obviously this is a series, so I wanted to make sure it all flowed, it made sense. I didn't know where to put this. So I hope that it works here, but I wanted to add this idea between adaptive versus maladaptive behaviors. So what we do when we're uncomfortable can work for us and work against us, of course. So we have two coping strategies. We have adaptive, and adaptive coping strategies help us move through and manage our emotions and basically get to the other side, right? These are things like riding the wave of the emotion, pausing, breath work, calling that person, calling a friend, getting outside, moving our bodies, whatever that looks like for you. Now, keep in mind, one person's adaptive could be another person's maladaptive. So this is all very individualized to you. Now, that's not the same for maladaptive. Some maladaptive activities are bad for everyone. So keep that in mind. Obviously, like drugs are bad for everybody. So maladaptive, they numb us for a short amount of time, but end up prolonging our struggles. Got it? So the maladaptive patterns are the alcohol, right? They are the dissociating. They are like mine, hyper independence, staying needless, wantless, food, Obviously, we need food, but using food to cope where we are, maybe gaining weight. We're seeing differences in our lab results. We feel out of control. We're starting to binge. We may feel even self-harm. I work with a client who is younger and does superficial harm. And what we recognize is that this individual is they get so rageful, but can't handle the rage and the disappointment they feel in themselves because they're hyper perfectionists, that they will do superficial wounds on themselves and feel relief because they've taken their anger and turned it into guilt because they've harmed themselves. And that relief will last only for a short amount of time. That guilt will then start to build up, and then boom, we just back into the saddle, right? So a lot of the things we talked about, so reaching for the food when you're not hungry, snapping at people, zoning out, putting off tasks, those are what we consider maladaptive behaviors. Other ones that I have on here is like self-criticism as a maladaptive task, perfectionism, both avoidant and achievement perfectionism. So I'll just do more, or I'm just not going to do it at all because I don't think I can be successful at it. Those are all maladaptive skills because they keep you stuck. They keep you in the same place. As I mentioned, breath work, journaling, taking a walk, moving your body, reaching out to a friend or support team, cuddling with your dog, naming the feeling instead of judging it. And one of the things I teach my clients when we are building awareness, these tools that I have them do is name it. There's that thought. You could say, you guys, that's just my subconscious. That's just the tape playing in my head. I'm going to take a deep breath, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, 8 seconds out, extended exhale. I'm feeling angry right now. Name the emotion. And I'm going to allow this anger to just pass through my body. And you just breathe through it until that anger moves through. Wonderful, wonderful way. Wonderful adaptive coping skill that creates actual change, because over time, the more that we do that, we become unconsciously competent in that, meaning it becomes our default. And one thing I want to say about working more from our conscious mind and creating new neural pathways, so new, patterns in our brains, is that when we're creating new neural pathways from a conscious mind, they stay in our conscious mind. So they're easier for us to access. They keep us out of that kind of monkey mind, and we're just more aware and more present. One of the things I find interesting is that we work from our conscious brain about 5% of the time for the majority of humans, because we're all just walking around like some tape playing in our mind. I think, oh my God, I wasn't going to talk about this, but like the movie The Matrix is like everyone just walking around in their subconscious brain, really, if you think about it, and becoming conscious and aware and understanding your power that you have in this whole thing called life. Like, whew, that's the reality. That's like, I think they call it red pill. I've actually not watched The Matrix, but I've heard so much about it. Have I watched The Matrix? I think I've watched one of them. Who fucking knows? I've slept since then. So this awakening of consciousness is a real thing. You hear like the hippies talking about it. It's a real fucking thing, and it will change your life. It will literally create change in your life. So we want to practice more adaptive skills, recognize the maladaptive skills for what they are, remind our brains like, you're telling me that's going to work for me, but I know that it doesn't. This is something that I like to do with people who want to reduce alcohol intake or nicotine intake, or of course, like emotional eating intake. Like recognizing the subconscious is trying to convince you that that thing is going to provide this sense of relief. But over a certain amount of time, you know that it no longer does that. It might do it in the beginning, but it no longer provides that relief. And therefore, it's a lie. And you can literally say, that's just my subconscious. It's lying to me. I know that true relief comes from what I can do now. And what can I do right now? I can breathe, I can walk, I can read, I can write. Okay. So I put in here a way to bring yourself back, and we're going to practice a grounding activity. So when you experience that resistance, so that's the talking you out of it, that might also be talking you into it. So like I just talked about with like trying to remove certain behaviors, addictions in your life, you're going to notice the resistance as if it's like walking in front of you. Like, that motherfucker is walking in front of me. And you're going to pause. And you're going to be like, not today, sir. Right? Not today. We're going to take that inhale for 4, exhale for 6. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Right now, how do I feel right now? I feel content. I have a little bit of a headache. So physically, I have a little bit of headache, but I feel pretty content. There's a part of me that wants to re-record this because it has so much information that I don't want people to be overwhelmed by it. So there's a little bit of that kind of, do I re-record this? So the next question though, so the first question is, what am I actually feeling right now? The next question is this response about survival or like habit? Okay. And survival seems so scary. Like, am I trying to receive something? Am I trying to receive love, connection, safety? Right? Can I sit with this discomfort for 2 more minutes before I act on it? I have sat with the discomfort of wanting to re-record this entire time. So yes, I can. This is called grounding. Grounding brings you into the present moment. It brings you, like I said, to this conscious place, the moment right now, because this is the only moment that we can control. We can't change the past. We can't predict the future. We can control now. Things like naming the emotion out loud, which I already talked about. In our Mindset of Matter app, we have a whole list of grounding activities. A body scan is one of those things. We also have a 5 senses grounding activity where you say, what are 5 things I see, 4 things I hear, 3 things I touch, 2 things I smell, 1 thing I taste. And that is a way, your senses are a wonderful way to bring you down. These practices slow down that spiral. Not even spiral, it slows down the quickness to be pulled into our comfortable or predictable place, right? It gives you a chance to choose a new response, which I've already talked about. And again, the more that we do this, we feel less like we're fighting our subconscious, like we're fighting the resistance. It will become easier for you, and you will eventually be comfortable. Like your body will kind of lead with it, right? And gently start to use it and have that awareness around it. So lastly, when we are trying to create change, this is something I talk about all the time, is making sure that the change isn't so big that it is overwhelming the system. And when we're trying, especially the beginning of the year, and I talked about this in the resolutions episode, we don't want to make it this elaborate thing that's so far from who we are today. We want to maybe take 2 or 3 steps ahead, not 10. So we don't want to make huge change overnight. It often will backfire because it's so uncomfortable. Think about this, guys. Your brain already wants to stay in the comfortable and the predictable. You want to make change, and then you decide to make the biggest change that's so far from the person you are right now. That is like a recipe for disaster, right? Instead, we want to make those micro changes, small shifts that feel doable to you. And one thing I talked about with my group was not only do we want to make those changes doable, but also flexible, because any sort of system, and I've talked about this, remember, we want your change to be able to bend but not break. Break meaning I just stop doing the thing. So say that you want to increase your steps. Rather than saying I have to get 10,000 steps each day, what if we say 6 to 10,000 works for me? Because that then incorporates life getting lifey. And you can say, well, I did 6. That's on the lower part of my goal for the range, right? So obviously we would only create a goal of 6 to 10 if maybe you're currently doing 4 to 6. Got it? So make the shifts doable, make them feel familiar enough that they keep you in like that spectrum of safety, but also like new enough that they create momentum to change. So like I said, if I'm currently at, say I'm at like 4,000 to 6,000 steps, we're like, I hit 6,000 steps twice a week. I'm going to make 6,000 my goal because it's not too overwhelming because I've been there before. It's predictable, but it does require a little bit of discomfort to hit that more consistently, right? And so I might go 6,000 to 7,000 for my next goal. That's just an example. Obviously, this is all situational for people. So I wrote some things here. Instead of saying, I'm never snacking at night again, you'll say, I'll brush my teeth right after dinner 3 nights this week, right? I'll make a cup of tea at 9 instead of heading to the kitchen. Little things like that. For the real work is so say that you start snacking at 9, at 8, I'm going to complete a 5-minute meditation to calm down my nervous system. Easy things like that. These small shifts will help to retrain your brain, and you don't have to stay in this small place. Do this small micro shift for a month, and then of course add to it, which is something we've talked about before. Change feels hard on your brain because it wants to stay safe, right? It wants what is known. It wants what is predictable. And what we don't need to do is shock our system. We also need to be aware that mental resistance is real. It is real, and we need to be ready for it. Okay. For you, I want your last question for this episode to be, what's one familiar pattern that's no longer serving me? And what's one tiny way I can begin to shift it? So we've already talked about the familiar pattern that's not serving you early in this episode. What is one tiny way that I can shift it? So that's that. Again, my whole brain is like, do it over, perfectionism, but I'm not going to. That's just my mental resistance. So hopefully this made sense because I have notes, but I have lots of thoughts too. And I have an ADHD brain that loves to tell you everything at once. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope that this blows your freaking mind, literally, so that we can change what we need to change. If you are like, you know what, Christina, this makes total sense to me. However, I don't feel like I can do this on my own. You're okay. The mindset of matter, you can see it on my sweatshirt, is completely designed around these concepts. Not only do we incorporate the therapeutic resources that we have in therapeutic practice, we then also incorporate exercise and nutritional science and behavioral change. Looking at your entire system, your mind, your body, your identity as one integrated system in one place, one coach, one program. It's myself, Coach Livia. She is also a licensed therapist with specialized training in this whole thing. So if you are interested in working with us, check out the Clarity Call link below. Also, of course, if you loved this episode, please share it with your homegirls. Everyone deals with this shit. Everybody. So share it with everybody, because the more you guys share this, the better it is for us. We're getting momentum, you guys. So let's not give up. Let's keep going, keep sharing, keep reviewing. Love a 5-star rating and review. And other than that, I don't even think I need to say it at the end of this episode, but I'm going to say it because I say it at every episode. But that is to remind you, what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. Bye-bye.